Welcome to KEI. It's a great honor for me to be here with you today to co-host this event with the Korean American, or the Hanmi Club. I'm the president of the CEO and CEO of the Korean Economic Institute of America. Our mission is to strengthen and deepen the U.S.-Korean relationship. The purpose of today's meeting is to discuss the potential benefits of the peaceful unification of the Korean Peninsula, and in particular, how unification could affect the USROK alliance. We have two distinguished panels that will discuss the arrival of Korea as a global player and the steps and challenges that need to take place to achieve peaceful unification. The second half of our program is we're going to be talking about the USROK alliance in general and how very special that is. We're privileged today to have a great lineup of speakers. We're blessed and honored to have the Ambassador from the Republic of Korea to the United States, His Excellency An Ho-young, to make opening remarks. I want to particularly thank my very good friend and mentor, former House Speaker Denny Hastert, who is also from my home state of Illinois. Without Speaker Hastert, I would not have been the full committee chairman or the chairman of the Asia or Pacific Subcommittee. I also want to thank former Senate Relations Committee Chairman Richard Lugar for coming today, and he'll address us later. We worked together in the past on reauthorizing the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, OPIC, and other issues, so it's a privilege for me to welcome him here later this afternoon. He'll speak more towards the middle of the program. Finally, it's my privilege to formally welcome and introduce Mark Tokala, who is KEI's new vice president and who will speak on the first panel. He's a 38-year veteran of the U.S. Foreign Service who served for 3 years as the DCM at the U.S. Embassy in Seoul. And now I want to welcome our co-host for today's event, Mr. David Pong, who is chairman of the Korean American Club, for his introductory remarks. And right after that, Speaker Hastert will be speaking, and then Ambassador An, and then both of them have to leave because of engagements right after this.
Good job. I just want to welcome you all to this conference, co-sponsored by KEI, Korean Economic Institute, chaired by Honorable Don Manzullo, former chairman of the House Subcommittee on the East Asian Pacific Affairs. Very good man. We have a right choice for this job, and he did a marvelous job. At this time, I also want to recognize a distinguished diplomat. Firstly, my ambassador, An Ho-young, who was a vice minister of foreign affairs in the past, but who served so well as a bridge to the continent, although Korea is divided, a small peninsula, though. I'd like to ask you to give a big hand to my ambassador, An Ho-young. Another longtime friend of mine, he's also a diplomat, and Mark Tokala, introduced by my friend Don, and who has recently joined the KEI to contribute to enhance the understandings between two peoples. There's a Mark over there. Give him a big hand, too. And I personally want to thank my old friend Han Dok-soo. He's not here. He's a former ambassador here, and he's the chairman of Korea Trade Association. And for his support to our Korean American Club to enable us to host this wonderful seminar with the KEI in Washington. In absence, why not we give him a big hand so that he can give us more money. As you all know, back in 2003, when the leftist government of President Roh Moo-hyun was inaugurated, things were suddenly turned from bad to worse on the relations between the United States and Korea due to the misunderstandings of the situation on the Korean Peninsula and the wrong idea of a democratic process there, mostly by the young generation at the time. The situation was getting uglier each day. And we, as the former Washington correspondent who worked here and who know something about two nations' relations, felt that we got to do something to correct the trend. And finally, we decided to set out to reform the society that was overspread by anti-American trend or tendency and feelers. That was 10 years ago. And today, we are very, very proud to announce that we have done a marvelous job, whereas the relations between our two great nations, once again, are not only on the right track, but also made a steady headway ever since. At this time, I'd like to express my personal gratitude to a couple of very, very distinguished guest speakers who made time to come to this seminar. Our old friend, the former Speaker of the House, Honorable Dennis Hastert, right there. He has to leave here momentarily, but and also he's not here as yet because he's going to appear on the second session. Former chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, our friend, old friend, Honorable Richard Lugar. I'll introduce him again later. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give them a big hand again for their coming and for their speaking to us, especially the kind of busy man here. And I'll just close my remark here. And God bless America. God bless Korea. God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great honor for me to be here today, and I want to thank my old friend Don Manzullo for allowing me to come and spend a few minutes with you and just talk about the history of the relationship between Korea and the United States. And you go back into the time in the early part of the last century, where during the time of Roosevelt and Taft, there was a decision that was made by the U.S. government that was not a very popular decision, and that was to step back from the Kingdom of Korea, which is a kingdom at that time, and to allow other forces to become prevalent in the area. And then, of course, it takes us very quickly to World War II, where, again, Korea was had been overrun by the Japanese Empire. And the United States ended up in that war and fought all the way through the Pacific. And finally, at the end of the war, in the time of MacArthur, was the division of North and South Korea. And of course, the influence of China, of communist China and the revolution in communist China, being a force that caused the division between North and South. And then, of course, in 1949. When the invasion came of South Korea by North Korea, aided by the Chinese communists, and the driving down of the forces all the way south of Seoul. Finally, President Truman, and then MacArthur coming in and joining with the South Korean forces and fighting their way back up through North Korea, almost to the border. And, of course, the inversion, again, of the Chinese forces that forced that war. It was a very, very tough time. It was a tough time for the Korean people. It was a tough time for the Korean peninsula. And, of course, forced the permanent division, or somewhat division, permanent since 1950s, between North Korea and South Korea. I remember as a young boy sitting and watching TV, because TV was relatively new at that time in our household, and watching the truce and the exchange of prisoners across the bridge. Of the prisoners came back, the U.S. prisoners, and of course the North Korean prisoners going back to North Korea. What we've seen during this period of time is two nations, a nation under democracy, under a free enterprise system, under the ability to create and create capital and invest their capital in their own businesses, a company that's created huge corporate conglomerates, but yet a country that has also encouraged individual economic responsibility. And I have to tell you, every time I've gone to Korea, and of course you go through Seoul, so every time I visited your major city of Seoul, the first time was 1986. And 1986 had been a great improvement over the last those 3 decades. But when I started to make more frequent trips to China, every time I went to Seoul, there was an improvement. First of all, it was a river walk along the river. And then the air was cleaned up, and the buses were using clean fuel, and people were dressing much better, and the quality of life and the beautiful high-rise apartments that were being built. And so Seoul and Korea has benefited such a great deal of the whole issue of two things: a democracy that's based on law, on value, on individual rights, on people having a free election, and an economy that's based on individual ability to create capital and create businesses and prosper without the federal government or the government taking away that ability to prosper from the people, as opposed to a country to the north, a government to the north, one country, a different government, where people are oppressed. People have no right and say on the elected people or who becomes the leadership in the government. A economy that's completely controlled. And if you, it's famous in this country to see the picture that was taken at one time of South Korea at nighttime by satellite, which was completely lit lights of all the cities and all the areas, and the same picture of North Korea with only a little bit of light around the major capital. You have a country where people are also tied into a gulag of almost 25 to 30% of the people who are under political observation all the time because of something they've said in their family or something action that or hoping to maybe reunite with the South. So you see these two dynamic difference between two governments in one nation, and you ask yourself, when can this change? When can this come together? And I think it's a diplomatic problem. It's a governmental problem because there are interests there, and I would venture to say it's not in the interest of China to see a reemerging of the Korean Peninsula because they have certain benefits keeping that tension. And certainly it would be to the great advantage of the United States, who has committed themselves to serving and protecting the Korean Peninsula, especially the southern government in the Korean Peninsula. It's been a commitment that we've made since World War II and followed up during the Korean War. And it's part of our national interest. And I have to tell you, the great appreciation for the Korean people in the United States, partly because so many of our young men have spent part of their military career in Korea. They've gotten to know the Korean people. They understand the industry of the Korean people. They understand the economic drive of Korean people, but also they understand the love of freedom. And we also, because of that, understand the difference between the opportunities of people in South Korea and the people in North Korea, a country where people have absolutely open opportunity to be industrious, to invest, to have a very bountiful type of lifestyle, and can have freedom of expression and political expression, as opposed to a regime in the North that allows no economic independence, that is impressed because of the government controls all the economic ability, and people are underfed, they're undernourished, they have not the economic ability to stand up and do things for themselves, and they have no political say in who the government is. So we see a huge contrast. But what we have to do, how will that change come about? Here's the conundrum of leadership in the free world for many, many years. At one time, we had the same problem and wondered how in the world the Eastern and Western Europe would come about and how would they change. And many of us thought, even myself, in my own lifetime, that I would never see that reunification. And so now we have to look at China and its action and the dynamics between Japan and the Philippines and Taiwan and the balance and skirmishing between the islands in the East China area, Eastern Pacific area. And one country that we can stand with, and we can start to find those solutions and try to work through those solutions it would be Korea. And we also have to have that cooperation, and we also have a relationship with Japan. But those two democracies are the ability to stand up and face the oppression that would come from the East. And even as China today has a great development and a vibrant economy, still there's a limited government, and there's still an interest by that government of China to control that area. And so it's important for the United States, and it's important for Korea, and it's also important for Japan to have a strong ability to stand up and protect itself and to be an ally to protect the area. I think that as we look into the future, what are the challenges and what are the strong parts? I've been interested lately in developing regimes for energy. And countries who have energy independence have the key to economic independence. And if you have a key to economic independence, you have a key to political independence. And so what South Korea has been able to do in the development of nuclear energy, I think, is astounding the world. You've become the world's leader in providing nuclear energy, new nuclear energy development around the world. And if we're going to have safe and a clean environment, then we have to have a safe development of nuclear energy. And your leadership has been unbelievable. But once you also have that ability to create energy around the world and nuclear energy around the world, we also have to find the solutions of what are we going to do with the nuclear waste. And there has to be a huge cooperation between our nations to be able to solve that problem of nuclear waste. The other issue, how do we have a cleaner environment, is that something that's happened in the United States that is phenomenal, and that's the development of new natural gas, gas reserves and new development of gas. So the United States, instead of becoming an energy importer, will soon become an energy exporter. And the use and need for LNG, compressed natural gas, in the Korean Peninsula is very high. What we're trying to do, and many of the sources now are very expensive. Some of the sources are a contract market with the Middle East based on petroleum. And so many people in the Asian area are paying probably 4 or 5 times the amount of money for their natural gas as we have in the United States. What we are doing is building export facilities on our west coast in Oregon and probably in other places, but one huge port in Oregon right now, so that we can export our natural gas to the Pacific area, Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and probably at the cost of a base of $4 to $5 per unit. and we can ship it there in 9 days' time from the western coast. So we are developing new interdependence on each other as we become more independent in the free trade that we've developed with Korea. That's been very, very successful. And I remember it's been a struggle. It wasn't easier to get the free trade agreement, but between your great embassy staff and your free people that come and talk to the free enterprise system and our folks in the Chamber of Commerce and others, we've been able to develop that free trade. The strength between the United States and Korea will remain strong for a long time. One, because of the military dependence on each other. Second, because the economic freedom that the people of Korea have, that you can make your own economic choices and develop your own economic well-being, that you have the right to take individual capital and to build a business and to have the fruits of that business. The third is the relationship that we have that you have in freedom, that you can have economic choices, but you can also have political choices. And the people, Korean people can go to the South Korean people can go to the polls and can make a decision on who they choose and follow through and enjoy that type of political freedom. But I think one of the most important relationships between the United States and Korea is our economic relationships, because we become more and more working together in an economy. The economy brings people together. It's the thing that sews our cultures together. And as we trade and have this economic give and take, and we find whether you're talking about nuclear energy or whether you're talking about wind energy or we're talking about new dynamics in electronics, we and Korea have had that relationship, that strong relationship that works together. And it's not just based on agriculture. It's not just based on shipping. It's just not based on textiles. It's a multifaceted economic interdependence. And that will lead us to, I think, a great future, a future that will be tied to the people of South Korea and the people of the United States for many years to come. And as that future becomes strong and continues to grow, I think that influence will also leak into northern Korea. I don't see how that government can sustain itself and sustain the people as long as there's a way for the North Korean people to begin to understand the prosperity and freedom of the people of South Korea. I think it's a great opportunity. I see it not as a challenge, but I think it is an opportunity to grow our democracy, to grow our economic freedom, so that we can become even a better goal and light in the East Pacific area. So it's my honor to be with you, to see this thing kicked off today, to see this great discussion. One of the things that we enjoy in the United States is a free press. One of the things that you represent in Korea is a free press. So as these ideas develop and this discussion develops, you are the people that are able to take those ideas and those discussions before the South Korean people. And hopefully in a period of time, I can't tell you in years or decades or how long, but you'll also be able to take that freedom of information to the people of North Korea as well. Thank you. God bless you. It's been my pleasure to be with you today.
Sure, Pastor. Thank you so much.
Can you stay for my comments?
Yes, I will.
We're going to make more than 5 minutes.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much.
I'm going to introduce you.
You don't have to.
You sure?
Good afternoon. Is everybody awake? Good afternoon. Let me double check. Good afternoon. So you're in fact awake. As a matter of fact, I think it will be very difficult not to be awake when you were listening to this wonderful presentation by Speaker Hastert. And I was just watching the clock, how long he was speaking, how short he was speaking, and then he spoke for 17 minutes. And then I was wondering how many subjects he was covering. And then I have to say how well he was covering all those 5 subjects. just try to recount what I have been counting. First of all, the development, economic and then democratic development that Korea has made over the past 60 years, that was the first point. Second point, the stark difference between South and North Korea, that was the second point. Third, the issue of unification between South and North Korea, that was the third point. Fourth, the issue of energy portfolio, how we could be managing the energy portfolio, was the fourth subject. Fifth, the source of strength of the relations between Korea and then the United States, that was the fifth subject. And then I'm telling you, in the sense that they are 5 separate subjects, and then as an ambassador, I have an opportunity to speak in various different opportunities. And then I take 17 minutes for each and every one of those 5 subjects. And I was listening to the speaker, and then he covered all those 5 subjects within 17 minutes. I just wonder how he does it, right? And then what is my conclusion? Well, that's why he was the speaker. So let's give him another big applause. So let me cover just one subject, which has been out of the 5, which has been mentioned by the speaker, and then that is about unification. And then I think all of you would agree with me in the sense that unification is an issue of paramount importance for Korea. Why? Because it is almost the only divided country for the time being. But somehow, discussion on the issue of unification, that in fact has been rather dormant in Korea up until early this year. And then early this year, my president, President Park Geun-hye, she in fact was making a New Year speech. And then in that New Year speech, she began to talk about, which is now very well known even in Washington, D.C., which is Unification Bonanza. And then apart from which is the best translation into English language, what she said in the Korean, well, as a matter of fact, that statement of hers, which was made at the start of this year, it in fact brought renewed interest in this very important issue called unification. And then that is the reason why we are seeing so many debates, discussions, seminars, etc., in Korea. And I think we, in fact, are importing some of that heat or renewed interest in the issue of unification here in Washington, D.C. So I guess there are a large number of seminars being held in Washington, D.C. as well. Personally, this is the 3rd seminar I'm coming to attend. The first one, it was co-sponsored between, let me try to think, SAIS of Johns Hopkins University and Presidential Commission of Economic Advisors coming from Korea. That was the first one I came to attend. Second one, it was co-sponsored between CSIS in Washington and a couple of government-affiliated think tanks in Korea. That was the second one. And then this is the third one. And on my way here, I was telling myself, third time charm, third time luck. Why do I say that? It's because this one, which is being held between KI in Washington, D.C. and Korean American Club in Korea, I think this seminar, the 3rd seminar I'm attending, somehow in my observation, it distinguishes itself from the 2 previous seminars I attended, as well as other seminars we find here in town. Why do I say that? At least 3 reasons why I think this particular seminar, you are very lucky. You are coming to the best one. Why I think this seminar distinguishes itself from 2 other seminars. The first reason why I think it does is because of participants. Because of the participants. And of course, we have heard about all those very influential politicians coming from the United States. Speaker Hastert, and then Honorable Manzullo, who used to be chairman of a very powerful committee in the House, which is Subcommittee on Asia and Pacific, East Asia and then Pacific Affairs. And then later today, we are going to hear from Senator Lugar, who used to be the chairman of a Senate Foreign Relations Committee. So it's just amazing. I mean, having all those highly respected politicians coming from the United States to share their views with us on this important subject of unification. They are not only highly respected politicians in this country, but as we already heard from Speaker Hastert, they are strong friend and supporter of relations between Korea and the United States. That's from Washington, D.C. What about from Korea? David Pong. I don't think it's an exaggeration at all to say David Pong has been the most influential journalist of our time, of my time. I mean, if somebody comes and then asks me, who among the journalists who have been active over the past several decades, who would you say would be the most influential one? I wouldn't wait a minute. I wouldn't hesitate a minute in saying David Pong. So he is here, one of the most influential journalists of our time. But look at him. He looks like a young man. I don't know how he manages it, but after all these years, he looks like a young man. And I have to say the same thing with respect to Moon Chang-guk. Well, this is something I have already told Mr. Moon, which is that I used to be a young diplomat back in early 1990s. And at the time, Mr. Moon used to be an equally young journalist covering for Chungang Daily here in Washington, D.C. And then it was the very early years of North Korean nuclear issue. And then I, in fact, was the officer in charge of North Korean nuclear issue in early 1990s. And then I was reading articles in Chungang Daily written by Moon Chang-guk. And I said to myself, well, in fact, Mr. Moon, he, in fact, has a perspective on this issue, which, as a diplomat, which, as a government official, I do not easily come by. So that insight, and then as a matter of fact, from his writings, it was very palpable how strongly he supports the relationship between Korea and the United States. And then he has been very consistent, even persistent, in sharing his views about the importance of relationship between Korea and the United States. And then I have to say the same thing with respect to Kim Seung-yeon, with respect to Mr. Lee Do-hoon, who in fact are taking over as a younger generation from David Pong as well as Moon Chang-guk. So that is my first point. I'm going to look at the participants we have today. And then, in fact, because of the participants, I think this seminar distinguishes itself. That is the second reason why I think this is a unique seminar. And then the second reason is the kind of impact it will have, likely impact it will have upon Korean society. When I look about the Korean society, I always tell myself there are three important layers of actors in the Korean society. First one, of course, first tier, policymakers, right? Second tier, opinion makers. Third tier, grassroots. And I told you about Presidential Commission on Economic Advisors. I told you about government-affiliated think tanks. And I think they may have impact upon policymakers. They may have impact upon opinion makers. But when it comes to grassroots Korean citizens, who will have the best impact, who will have the most, effective impact? Wouldn't you agree it will be the news media, right? And then, as I already told you, from the Korean side, it is the Korean American Club. For those of you who are not familiar with the Korean American Club, Korean American Club is an association of journalists, which foreign minister and even prime minister in Korea, they try to make a point of never missing that event. So that's a very influential, association of journalists back in Korea. So you can count on me when I say what we are hearing today. It in fact will have the best chance of reaching the citizens on the Korean street, the grassroots people. So that is the second reason why I think this seminar really distinguishes itself from any other. My third and last reason why I really was impressed with this seminar is because of the questions which the panel are going to raise and discuss today. I read the flyer for this seminar very closely, and then it was raising three questions. First, for unification, what do we have to do? See? Very action-oriented question. It is not saying, what is the benefit of unification? What is the political benefit, economic benefit, strategic benefit? What it says is that, what do we have to do, right? Very action-oriented question. What was the second question in the flyer? The second question in the flyer was, what are the challenges we have to meet? And then again, it's a very action-oriented question. Why? Because when you ask what are the challenges, you wouldn't stop there. When you identify the questions or challenges, you would naturally wish to move a step further, which is how to address those challenges. So again, it's a very action-oriented question. Third question, what was the third question I read in the flyer? It was, well, what impact it will have on the relationship between Korea and then the United States. Again, it is not a descriptive question. The way I look upon it, if you say what impact it will have on the relations between Korea and then the United States, that question may be descriptive, but at the same time, when you say these are the impacts, positive impacts, negative impacts, quite naturally, then you would say, okay, on the one hand, we have negative impacts. On the other hand, we have positive impacts. Let's minimize negative impacts. Let's maximize positive impacts. Wouldn't you say that? So in my mind, all those three questions which I read in the flyer for the seminar today, what measures do we have to take? What are the challenges along the way? What would be the impact on the relationship between Korea and the United States? I admire you for those very relevant questions, and I admire you in the sense that they are all very action-oriented questions. So these are the three reasons why I think this is one of a kind of seminar. So this is the reason why, as I repeat myself, you are very lucky. So best wishes. Thank you so much.